This learning object is a production of Abu Dhabi Men's College, Center of Excellence for ICT and Learning Technology.
I'd like to talk to you today about the advantages and disadvantages of the four major news media. I'd like to look at print, which refers to both newspapers and magazines. Then we'll look at radio, then television, and finally at the internet. So these are the four major sources of news that we receive. And each of these media have strengths and they have weaknesses. Let's start with print. I'd say that the major strength of the print media is depth. If you take a story from the front page of a newspaper and you read it out loud, it'll probably take you 10 to 15 minutes to read that story. Most stories on television, most news stories on television, last between 30 to 90 seconds. So obviously in a print story, there's much more information, there's much more detail, there's much more depth to the story than there is to a story that you're going to hear on the radio or that you're going to watch on television. So I'd say that's the number one advantage of print, is there's more detail, there's more depth. There's some other obvious advantages to print as well. In print, you can refer back to a story. You can buy a newspaper in the morning, you can read it at any time during the day. If you need to refresh your memory about something, you can look back at the story again. If I told you that the budget of the United Arab Emirates for this year was 70 billion or 73 billion 489,632,348 dirhams and 63 fils. What was the number I just told you? You've got no idea, okay? So print handles stories that have a lot of details and a lot of numbers in them. So business stories are very good for print. Any story that has a lot of numbers, print handles it much better than television or radio because you can refer back to the number again. Okay, so that's print. Does print have any disadvantages? Yes, it does. It's relatively slow as a news media. You don't get traffic reports in the newspaper because obviously by the time the newspaper is printed, the traffic has changed. Print is also, it uses a lot of paper, it creates a lot of garbage. It's not the most environmentally friendly media. Okay, radio. What's the advantage of radio? Radio is fast. Radio is far and away the fastest news media. If something happens, it's reported on radio before you hear it anywhere else. Radio, this is why radio is very good for traffic reports. You can give updates all the time on what's happening with the traffic. Another advantage of radio, and a big advantage of radio, is you can do other things as you're listening to the radio. You can cook dinner, you can clean the house, you can drive your car as you're listening to radio. There's no other news media that you can use as you're driving around in your car. Radio is also very casual. And this is something I really like about radio. It's the most conversational of all the media. It's the friendliest media. It's very casual. It's not formal. Television is a much more formal media. Television. Television, I would say the greatest advantage of television is emotional impact. I think back years and years ago to the Ethiopian drought and the crisis that happened in Ethiopia. Print reporters had been in there for months reporting on this, and they had been talking about how children are starving and whole villages are being wiped out, and people read about it in the newspaper and they felt sorry for these people, they empathized with these people, but it wasn't until the television crews went in and started showing images of what was really going on there and the children with their distended bellies that it really struck home, and people reached into their pockets, took out some money, and sent it to relief organizations. So television is a very powerful media. It's an emotionally powerful media. The war in Iraq, you can read all you want about that in the newspaper, But until you actually see the children being taken to the hospitals, you don't really get the full impact of what's going on there. So that is the biggest strength of television, is the emotional impact. Television obviously has some other strengths too. When I get home after a long day at work and I'm tired, and reading can be an effort, something I don't want to do. Television, all I need is a couch and a remote control, and I'm off and flying. So it's it's an easy media, and it matches the lifestyle of people today. Disadvantages of television, I think one of the disadvantages is television is largely fictional. We watch television for escapism, to escape from the world. And we watch dramas and we watch comedies, and all of this that we watch is fictional. Suddenly we're supposed to click and go from a fictional setting to watching the news. And I don't know, it's just a funny media that way. The fourth media, and the newest media of them all, and the way more and more people are getting their news now, is the internet. And I would say the greatest strength of the internet is choice, that you can look as deeply into any subject as you want. You can go, for instance, I like boxing. I don't box myself because I don't like getting my nose broken, but I like watching boxing, and I follow boxing. I can look in the newspaper, I can look on television, I can look on radio, and there's very limited boxing news. However, I can go to certain websites and I can find out what the latest fights are, who's fighting, who's winning, who's losing, and I have this incredible choice that the internet gives me. I think the major disadvantage of the internet is pretty obvious, that not everything on the internet is legitimate or is credible. And it's often very difficult to distinguish between what is credible and what isn't credible. So these are the four major news media: print, radio, television, and the internet. And I would say the major strength of print is its depth. The major advantage of radio is its speed. It's very fast. The major advantage of television is its emotional impact, and the major advantage of the internet is choice.